what do you make of just of Facebook not being there? Ed?
I mean, come on, we should call this what it is, right? It's a campaign event at the White House for a lot of his supporters online, right? And, you know, if you want to do a campaign event, do a campaign event. If you want to call it a social media summit and say that this is a way to convene people within this circle and talk about issues in terms of whether there's censorship or not, that's a different matter. I don't think that's what this looks like.
Onyanga?
Hi, good morning from San Francisco.
Good morning.
You know,
thanks for being up with us. I know what time. Oh my God, yeah.
No problem. Happy to be here. You know, we're early stage investors, and we invest in seed and Series A companies. And a big consumer trend we're seeing in terms of how people are thinking about the world around them is how do they gather, where do they find community, where do they connect? And historically, that's been across platforms like Facebook, Twitter, name all the social platforms. And increasingly, we're seeing this Swiss Army knife type approach not working as effectively for users. There's too many things going on, and it's becoming unwieldy. And because of that, we're seeing a trend around companies and founders going out and starting businesses that are more single purpose, a place where a user can do one or very few things. And if you think about some of the conversations that are happening on Facebook or some of these other social platforms, let's say communities that are talking about their intimate health details, people living with medical conditions or families who have children with medical conditions. And as we think about how consumers are perceiving and viewing the trust or the lack of trust on some of these social platforms, we see the opportunity for standalone platforms that can begin to form and develop and be billion-dollar businesses where people find more trust around very specific things such as health.
And that's interesting, because so much of the investment thesis right now in the Valley, at least for the last few years, has been anything that might remotely take on Facebook or Google is not investable. You shouldn't put money into that. It seems like you're getting at something here that sort of gets around that, or has the sentiment shifted?
So there are a lot of behaviors that live today on Facebook or other social platforms, and not all of these behaviors are well accommodated for. And these behaviors, we believe, can be breakout, standalone billion-dollar businesses. An excellent example is Discord, for example, that communication around gaming and the interaction in these gaming communities could happen on a platform like a Facebook or a Twitter or wherever, but the fact that Discord can live on its own and have these interactions in intimate, connected ways really exemplifies that there is appetite for that. And increasingly, especially with younger generations, with Gen Z, which a lot of investors are thinking very deeply about, how do these individuals think, communicate, perceive the world around them? There's tremendous opportunity to build something that's very unique for them and for the way they live and exist and create in this world.
That's what the summit kind of is getting at too, if you think about it, right? So it's our cipher, our little group here. We trust each other. We like to talk to each other, including Trump, right?
But in terms of these investment dollars going into these sort of very specialized, smaller companies, and I mean, that sort of gives into the idea that the size of Facebook, the size of these mega platforms are really, you know, consuming all the oxygen in the room. And that is an argument for breaking up these companies.
Yeah, let me give you an example. We just invested in a company this past spring called CoStar. It's a social app centered around astrology. And astrology has existed for over 2,000 years in many different forms. And if you go on a Facebook or an Instagram, you'll see lots of hashtags and communities where people are talking about astrology and gathering around astrology and using it as a way to find meaning and connection and community. And we see that there's an opportunity to unbundle that out of these social platforms and build a standalone app and a standalone social community that is entirely centered around this. And that's the entire purpose of CoStar. And we invested in that this past spring and are seeing this kind of human connection on this social platform. And what's really exciting is, I think, especially in an era when people are more lonely, more depressed, there is this desire to connect around these very specific interest groups.
Nargia, just with everything you've said in mind, what was your initial response when Libra was announced? I mean, we're still talking about it. Powell was talking about it yesterday. I mean, just off the top of your head, what did you think, and where's that headed? And good, bad for Facebook? Will it last?
So there's a lot of interesting things happening in the market right now, and there's opportunity for these big platforms to capture different parts of it, whether that's a marketplace, whether that's social, image sharing, whatever it is. I think it's an interesting space for them to get into and for their users to have exposure. Too early to tell where it's headed, but clearly a lot of appetite and interest for people to see what are the other things that these platforms can offer and whether it's something that consumers will latch onto.